All right, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our capacity building workshop today. Today's workshop is going to be on corporate relationships presented by Kevin Jamison, who did our fundraising workshop last month. Kevin served 20 years as an intelligence officer in the United States Marine Corps and has over a decade of fundraising experience. He has started a nonprofit that battles veteran homelessness, developed corporate relations efforts for the Veterans of Foreign Wars Foundation, and developed a foundation for the largest credit union in Oklahoma. As with our past two workshops, because this is a webinar, if you have any questions, please submit those into the chat and we'll get to as many questions during and at the end of the workshop. And I will go ahead and pass it over to Kevin, and just let me share my screen. All right, we're ready to go, Kevin.
Excellent. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Kevin Jamison. As you can tell, I am the living, walking oxymoron, the Marine Corps intelligence officer. So today I'm here to talk to you about nonprofit corporate relations, and this is one of my favorite subjects to speak about. Next slide, please. Okay. In this class, we're going to talk about how to prepare for an event and some things that you need to do for yourself, almost like a checklist. We're going to talk about ROI and what that is and what it means. We're going to talk about corporate sponsorship development, how to develop your sponsorship package. We're going to talk about companies to target and some ways to target them. Corporate pitching will be talked about, as well as some cold call and pitching advice and techniques. And then I'm going to talk about how to set yourself up for the event to support corporate relations better. And then I'm going to talk about follow-up and follow-through. If you were in my last class, you know that follow-up is what other people do. I do follow-through because it takes everything home and it sets you up for success for the next event. Next slide, please. So the first thing you need to figure out is, what do you have to offer? If you could answer these questions, you will feel confident going into a meeting with a company or your first time meeting, or even just reaching out. So this is how you determine what you have to offer. Next slide. Now, this is a copy and paste slide. What is Voices and Votes? We did that. We talked about this last time, only I'm going to refer to these slides in a different manner. Next slide, please. So when you see this museum on Main Street, at the bottom, you see, to date, Museum on Main Street exhibitions have visited over 1,800 communities in all 50 states. This is information that you will want to put, make a note for your, when you go to develop your sponsorship package. So this is information about the event. And any data, any existing, if you have a travel through event or you're doing an event that was done before, you should be looking for past data to put into your sponsorship package, because data speaks to companies. Next slide. So what we're going to do next is we're going to look at the exhibition from a slide deck that we got. Next slide. So when we look at this next slide, we kind of see the layout for this exhibit. And when I look at this, I see a lot of bright, vivid colors. So that means logos aren't going to pop out. They're not going to contrast. So that means I can't really put logos too many places in there. So I'm going to be looking up and down for opportunities to put logos, not straight in front of someone, because it's just going to blend in. And quite honestly, you don't want to distract from the display, because that's the whole purpose of the event. Next slide. Same thing here. Next slide. This is important because this shows you a walkthrough. One of the things that I always tell people before you have an event, you should walk through the event as if you're an attendee. And in your mind, before you game and plan an event, you should be saying, I'm an attendee. It should start with, I'm pulling in. How did I get directions to get in there? Okay, are they correct? Yes. And then it goes parking and then flowing into the vent. You want that whole transition to be seamless and as smooth as possible. There is nothing worse than a nonprofit fundraising event where you have to wait in line for 20 minutes just to check your name in so you can go get some food or get a drink. So make sure that you have a seamless flow and that you are prepared and set yourself up for success. Also on the floor plan, I look at places that are kind of choke points, like entries and exits, so that I could put signs up there that people could see that would be outside of the display. Next slide, please. I love this slide because this shows you the entrance to the slide. One, I would have entrance to the event. One, I would definitely have some signage on there for a sponsor, or I'd at least make an attempt to put some signage there. And two, that could be those two people right there. Those could be some of your sponsors greeting people at the exhibit. If you have an invested sponsor that's gung ho and somebody that's really excited about it, give them that opportunity to welcome people, wrap up around them. You got motivated volunteers, put them there, but make sure it's someone. If you have people coming through your event, make sure it's someone who represents your organization well. I can't tell you how many times I've come to events and had greeters that didn't know anybody in the organization or could lead a VIP walking through that was looking for one of my executives that could lead them to that. You want to set yourself up for success always. Next slide. So here's how we figure out what we have to offer. Where's the exhibit? Is it possible to have a sponsorship on that place? Most football fields are like GHA Stadium in Kansas City. And their names. You can have your exhibit sponsored unless it's out of business, and they probably won't want it to be sponsored. But for the VFW National Convention, when I did corporate relations for that, we had a premier sponsorship. Now it wasn't a naming sponsorship. It wasn't the USAA VFW National Convention. It was the VFW National Convention, and USAA was our premier sponsor. And they got a lot of things for that. Whereas the parking, you can definitely get a parking sponsor, maybe a towing company, things like that. Enterprise, maybe they want to sponsor the parking for your event. It would make sense. Where are the places to sit and rest? Sit and rest sponsors. Who would want to sponsor sit and rest? I don't know. Furniture stores, maybe. Maybe you have a store that has like luxury pools or something. These are all options for you. Where and how people flow in the exhibit. Again, that's where you want to put your signage, and that's where you want to recognize your sponsors. And you want to recognize your sponsors appropriately. Make sure if that's a big premier sponsor, that logo is shining bright. Where are the locations and opportunities to recognize your corporate sponsors? I tell people signs, screens, mobile pushes, stickers on the floor, however complicated you want to get, you can get. I have seen everything from in New Orleans, we were able to use TV screens and get sponsorships put on that. In some other locations, because we had an app, we were able to sell pushes from the app. On some of our conventions, we were able to, as part of their sponsorship package, we did a Facebook Live from the event, which is a great way to promote the company and recognize them, a great way to promote your event online, and it makes people more involved and it's more activity. All of those things that I was talking about is information that you need to communicate to your sponsors. Having a floor plan helps that tremendously, but getting on site ahead of time is going to have you get a feel. So my first recommendation, if you have an event coming up, is to get on site and walk through it and take your phone out and video you walking through it, because later on you can refer back to that and go through it. And you walk through it as an attendee and look for places where you could recognize a sponsor. I remember one time we were trying to figure out how we could recognize sponsor on the steps of an escalator in Kansas City, because the escalator was so steep that everybody was just looking straight up. So we were trying to figure out ways that we could put sponsor signs inside the escalators. We weren't successful. We ended up putting signs at the end where everybody gets off. And then when is your event? Make sure that that event is deconflicted with the surrounding communities and deconflicted with your sponsors as well. And sometimes you have control over that, and sometimes you don't. But the best thing to do is what I tell people: if you're a good corporate relations person and you know your companies, that you're going to be that if you know your companies, that you will know um, what they have coming up. You're going to know what they're doing. You're going to know in general. Next slide, please. So, what is voice and votes? What I tell people is this event, if you're going to do corporate relations right, what I love to do is plan other events to support the corporate sponsors. I definitely like to do a reception for our sponsors. That was like at a minimum, we'd always do that. And it just a little something to show your gratitude. And I know many of you are strapped with tight budgets, but maybe you could reach out to your community bank or to your community credit union to be your reception sponsor. That's something else you could get sponsored. Um, but it's really a good chance to recognize and honor your sponsors, or maybe just do a private showing at the exhibit. And where you're walking around or your executives are walking around and you're really rolling out the red carpet and making them feel like they've invested in something wisely. Um, there are many possibilities for promotions and partnerships, and your limit is your imagination and your organizational boundaries. I tended to test the VFW's organizational boundaries quite a bit because I was out, they hired me to do sponsorships, and that's what I was doing. And I was very ambitious. Some of the things that, for an example, that I pushed the boundary on was the VFW would not work with cannabis or marijuana, and then they wouldn't work with CBD. But when I was on there, we were able to start working with CBD companies once the federal regulations relaxed on that, and we were able to work with them and have some CBD companies that had CBD products for veterans sponsor the convention and attend the convention. So sometimes pushing boundaries is a good thing. Sometimes pushing boundaries is a bad thing. But the most important thing that you want to do is just make sure it makes sense and make sure it goes with what you're trying to accomplish. And things I've done with my sponsors in the past, dinner, always, that's kind of easy. But I had all our sponsors get together for a karaoke event. I've done bowling. I've done backstage for events. I've had meet and greets whenever we had VIPs, like at the VFW. We had John Stewart come through one time, and I was arranging for some local corporate CEOs and stuff to come hear him speak when we were there. When President Trump spoke at the VFW National Convention at that time, I was aligning our corporate sponsors to get in there and doing these things are important. So you want to know where you want to know where your sponsors are and what they want and what they want to do and what they're looking for. Um, but the other thing that you want to do, and that other things that I've done with my sponsors, and this is probably the most important one, is at the very bottom, positioning them to advance their business interests with access to VIPs at your event, or just similar access to the event. Maybe a sponsor reaches out and say, "Hey, I have, um, I would like to do a private night with this event with with my company. Would you be willing to do that?" I would be like, "Yes, come on. If we can make it happen, let's figure out a way to make it happen." Um, One of the things that you may do is maybe you have the mayor coming to your your corporate reception. That, and there's some people that want to get access to that. Well, if you sponsor, you can get in the reception. I'm not telling you to go out there and strong arm people, but there are ways that you can generate interest in your event that will make people work for you. One of the biggest things at the VFW National Convention is the Secretary of the VA would attend. And a lot of companies that were trying to either renew government contracts or had a new government contract they were trying to attain, what they would be reaching out to do is try to have positioning where that they would be able to have some time with the Secretary of the VA. And that money was, that time was priceless to them. So get to know your corporate partners and understand what they want, but mostly try to understand what their business goals are, and then keep that in the back of your mind as you go through and you're networking. And sometimes I've just made connections, and that was amazing value to my partners. Next slide. So this is I plagiarized this. The link is right below there where I copied this from. Return on investment is a metric used to understand the profitability of an investment. ROI is a business term. Return on investment. A lot of times in companies, return on investment is a financial number. But sometimes, because we work in the nonprofit space, sometimes your return on investment are feel goods. Sometimes the return on investment is lifting up in the community. Sometimes return on investment is a company that's been going through some bad PR. You're going to give them a chance to get some good PR. That can be a return on investment. So remember, don't think in terms of dollar sign and return on investment. Sometimes just by being a good corporate partner, you can be giving good return on investment just by making good connections for them. Next slide, please. Quite simply, ROI is just what a company can expect to receive in return by supporting you, whether that's recognition. It could be lifting them up in front of your audience. They're in a business for profit. They're investing into you and your organization's exhibit. Remember that. They are in business, they are professional, and they are giving their money to you because they see value in what you're doing. They look for partners to make them more profitable. What are you doing to make your partners more profitable? Oftentimes, companies, especially mid and smaller sized ones, do not have a philanthropic budget. It may come from a marketing budget. It could come from a community engagement budget. So understand, companies have rules and limitations sometimes on how those pots of money are spent. So that's why it's important to get to know your corporate partners. I've gone through marketing budgets, philanthropic budgets, foundations, grants from the corporate foundation, and I've even gotten money from community engagement budgets. And believe it or not, some companies had different people in charge of those budgets. So you may be getting you might get handed off inside of a company from one person to another to make the money work. Make sure that you pay attention to the title of the person that you're working with in a company. And if you make a real connection with any of those people, tighten it and strengthen it. Go to lunch. If you have a great conversation with someone on the phone, you're like, wow, they would be kind of cool to get to know them. There's no problem with that. Next slide, please. So this is what kind of like the whole ROI conversation boils down for you. The reason why I put that in there is ROI sets you up. If you can answer those questions to yourself, then you will be confident going through the door. How are you lifting the company up? What is the company sponsoring your event going to do for them? How are you a partner that can help their business? How can you help lift them up in the community? How can you do it? How can your executives help? Who are you connected to? Maybe it's not you or your organization. Maybe your cousins or friends or your family has a business that they want to do business with. Make that introduction. Connections, what it's all about. I never hesitated to make connections. And the reason why is if I thought two companies could help each other, I'd point at each other and tell them why I was introducing them and get out of the way and be quiet. Sometimes I'd get thanked. Sometimes they'd start working and I'd never even know it. So just be a good partner. How are you a partner that can help their business? I just said that. I apologize. How can this event help this company be more profitable? So For example, I had, when I was doing my tiny houses project, what we did is we had an event that we had 10 tiny houses out there, and Home Depot came out in mass. So we had a media event out there that day, and everything just really worked. And that's how we lifted Home Depot up. And Home Depot then gave us an $80,000 grant to do work on those houses. So sometimes it all comes together and sometimes it doesn't, but there are different ways you can do that. But that time on the air, people saw Home Depot building tiny houses for homeless veterans in Kansas City. And I guarantee you Home Depot saw a boost. One thing I will tell you is this. When I was working with Harley Davidson, every Harley Davidson dealer that worked with the VFW saw a 3% boost in sales. And I got that data inadvertently from one of the Harley Davidson reps, and they told me about it. This is why data is important. And that's why Harley Davidson started partnering with the VFW and started converting some of their rides that were for other nonprofits to the VFW. The bottom line is, if you can honestly answer those questions yourself, if you and your executive team can sit down, or your board can sit down and answer these questions for yourself, then you're going to be confident walking through a door. Cold calling is no problem, because you're like, I have got an amazing thing for you to be a part of. And then you've got your pitch. It almost writes itself. But the rest of that support for the return on investment resides in data, exposure and demographics at the event, placement of the company in the very public setting and how you do it, how you capture the data and prove your value to the company. So part of follow through is like, hey, at this event, we had 750 people walk through. Maybe you had a check-in, you got an email list. I don't know what you've worked out with a company, but those things speak to companies, and you have to do that follow-up and follow-through by giving them more data so that they can place more value on the return of the investment. And I always took my time doing the ROI, because I'd let a few weeks pass and then I would submit it, because it just gave a chance for everybody to breathe. And then I would find that the company would be ready to talk to me about it. And I also found that, hey, would you like to go to lunch? I'd like to share some of this data about the event and get your feedback real time, your thoughts on it. And that was an excellent way to get feedback, communicate data, and see how, and measure, take the temperature of how the relationship is going. Maybe they thought I was full of it and the event did not deliver. That has happened before to me. There's nothing worse than when you have an event and 4 people show up. It's happened. I can't guarantee success all the time, but I had to learn a lot of hard lessons. But we're going to take a look at what data is given that can help you get sponsorships that I would include in my sponsorship package. Next slide. These right here, the data right here, average number of partner organizations per community is 4. Total number partnered, it's great, but I love the percentage up there. That is information that you need to communicate in your sponsorship package, especially the 61% of Voices and Votes visitors reported that they patronized another business in town. That will speak to those businesses. Next slide, Nick. This is more data. Next slide. Dollar signs. And this could be where maybe your partner, maybe you've been working with companies for a while that are like, yeah, we want to help you, we want to help you raise money. Maybe could be your chance to get some matching donations or something like that, using this information right here. Next slide. In quotes, never underestimate the value of qualitative and quantitative data. Next slide. So to plan for good ROI, you have to you want to make sure you capture attendance numbers. If you can capture demographic data, excellent. Basic attendance numbers and exposure numbers for their logo are important. So if you put the logo online, how many times was the website viewed? How many times was that ad viewed? If you put it on social media, what was the share rate? If you put it in an email, what was the open rate for that email? If you are communicating and you're including that company's logo, you are lifting that company up. And you need to communicate who you lifted that company up to and the audience that you lifted it up for. Communicate to them. They will appreciate it. We already talked about signage, what gets the most views. I've seen stuff hanging from the ceilings, stuff hanging from the walls, stairs, screens, apps. I even put I put sponsorships on bandanas, and it was interesting because people would be like, "Why would you put logos on bandanas?" Because I had all the bartenders wearing the bandanas walking around. Great way to and by the way, the companies loved that. I thought it was really cool. And then we did some giveaways with the bandanas. Next slide. Think about what else can increase their exposure. One is recognition. Ensure that all staff in speaking roles, if you have announcements that are going to be made, make sure that you're thanking your sponsors and thanking them by their proper corporate names. I've said it before the last class, but it's lazy writing when you say we'd like to thank our sponsors. You need to say, I would like to thank Humana for their $50,000 health fair sponsorship. Today, they're doing harmonica classes to help breathing for aging veterans. Boom. That's a great way to recognize a sponsor and lift up what they're doing. Plan to help your organization recognize sponsors and their exposure to attendees. When I was at the VFW, I had the sponsor recognition written into speeches. I had to make sure that the sponsor recognition was included in videos that were done. Anything going on that day, my sponsors were included in it, and they were recognized. Whether it just be screen flashes of logos or it be people speaking it, lift up those sponsors. They are your bread and butter. Treat them like that. Free tickets? Yes. Give them free tickets, swag, amazing meet and greets, anything that you can do to lift them up, do it. Next slide. All right. So who should you offer your sponsorships to? Well, who's hosting the event? That would be the first place I go. If there's a business is hosting an event or a organization hosting an event, I would talk to them. Maybe they, let's say you're at a library, maybe they have some corporate relationships you could lean on. Maybe it's at a school. Maybe they have a foundation that has some funders that might be interested in supporting this event. Don't limit yourself. Network out of the box. Who are the regular supporters that would support this? Your existing partners. Go ahead and lean on them. Get your low-hanging fruit. The reason why you want to get the low-hanging fruit first is that success gets more success and people want to be a part of something. And we're going to talk about this later. I'm going to talk about some basic psychology kind of principles that apply here. And this is one. If we see a crowd, we go to that crowd. And that's the same thing with logos. Trust me, if Walgreens sees CVS's logo somewhere, they might want to put their logo beside it or bigger and above it. Remember that. So lift up your sponsors and promote them, not because you want to recognize them, but because it can help you get more sponsorships. All right. Let's see. Who are the government officials you can engage for supporter partnerships? Some government officials have connections that could work for you. You're just asking for introductions if they have any that you want to find know people that might want to be a part of this. Ask them. Who would be logical partners to help make your event a successful one? If you can answer that, then you have a reason to talk to them. All of these questions are just questions that are giving you a reason to talk to people. If you can tell, one of the things that I'm trying to tell you is build your confidence up to walk through doors. And who would this exhibit be important to in your community? You have a reason to talk to them. This could be it could be your Rotary, it could be veteran organizations, it could be art organizations, it could be art schools, it could be art businesses. There's tons of things that you could really think about, but sometimes you're limited by the size of your community, and I really understand that. Next slide. So how do we present what we have to offer? So all that whirlwind slides, and I'm sorry I blazed through it. We've got limited time. Um, all that did was prepares you to organize your information into a logical thing to show people what you have to offer. Nick, can you show the first web page? So you want to make sure you have your event information online. What Nick is showing you right here, this is for the VFW convention upcoming. And they show you information about where, if you want to exhibit, you want to sponsor, scrolling down, Nick. This is what I love. Look at all that information. Keep going. They have highlights for the day, for the scheduled event, additional resources, what you need to know. Keep going down, sir. Keep going. They've got an app. That's great. And a lot of you won't be this robust, but it's okay. But what you should do is use examples like this. Keep going down, sir. There we go. And look what they did. They're recognizing sponsors right there in logos, and they're kind of gone in priority order. It's very well done and it's clean. This is how you recognize sponsorship, and this is how you keep it going into the next year. You make things very easy. Can we go back to the slideshow, Nick? And go to the next slide. So I talked sponsorship development the last class in depth. I'm not going to talk too in depth about it. You want it to be a 1 to 2 page PDF file. You want to have your event information, any ROI information that you've captured that you want to include in your package, you can put it there. You want to create levels. You want to create opportunities if you're having a reception. Then, you've got your communications channels lined up that you're doing. I really talked more in depth about sponsorship packages last time. And the reason why I did was because I wanted to keep more focus on the cold calling and pitching today. Next slide, Nick. So you want to list out your opportunities, decide what level. Hey, if you give me $5,000, I'm going to give you everything. Decide what your appropriate sponsorship level is based on the event and the size of your community. Somebody doing an event in a small town in Missouri probably will not have as many sponsorship opportunities to get sponsorships as somebody that is near Kansas City or St. Louis. So your challenges are there. And I wish I had more help for you in the rural communities. I have some advice, but you probably have to reach out to me individually. It just gets too specific at a certain page. Nick, can you go ahead and open up the sponsorship package, please? Nick will send you the links for all of these pages as well. And this is a sponsorship package for the VFW National Convention. The reason why I like to use it, it's very robust. It's more than 2 pages. It's about 5 pages, okay? And the reason why is it's got a lot of information, and it's targeting a very specific set of people, and it's really focused on marketing. Nick, can you scroll down? So the first thing is it has our contact information, and then it talks about the event. Scroll down. They communicate their impact. They describe right there, going down. And that communicating your impact is communicating return on investment. Your impact is their return on investment. When people are investing on you, what you do with that money is a return on their investment too. Don't forget that. Going down, then you see our sponsorship opportunities mapped out in a nice matrix. Scrolling down. And then you see some one-offs. Keep going. You see some one-offs like luncheons and things like that. That's where you can put your reception. That's where you can put a parking sponsor. A lot of different opportunities. Scroll down. Have some a la cartes. We put Facebook Lives on there and things like that. And then just cool different stuff. Okay. So you can download that package and look at it. I just wanted you to have a good example to build off of. If you're not scouring the internet and robbing other people's ideals, you're doing it wrong. So give them credit though. All right, this class, this slide's a little hard to read, but I'm going to go through it. So when I target companies, this is what here's my approach. First, I target my other partners or sponsors I've had, my repeat supporters. We call them repeat offenders, and we love them because they always supported us and they're the old faithfuls. And then I would look for companies that were trying to actively market to my audience. How did I figure that out? Well, Google Alert is your friend. If I operated in the veteran space, I put who I would set up Google Alerts for: government contract awarded, VA contract awarded, and I'd read and make notes of those companies. And about 6 months later, I'd start reaching out to them because it took them about that long before they'd start trying to think about what they were going to do with their marketing dollars. But you can set up Google Alerts for whatever may be appropriate to your event ahead of time. Maybe there's companies that are having some bad time in the news. This might be your chance to help them be a part of something good. My next step would be to look at companies by size. It just makes sense that the more size they have, the more overhead they have. When I say size, I look by annual revenue, not by number of employees. I look by revenue, not employees. The larger the company and the revenue, the more likely a sponsorship. That's the way it always worked out for me. I would then go for banks and financial institutions next. At the VFW, we were contractually limited to what banks we could go to. I was told that I couldn't talk to certain banks. I would also look for veteran-owned companies or companies that patriotically advertise. If you're doing something, if your event is something patriotic, makes sense. I would look for companies who sponsor the arts. You should be able to look at other art events around your area and look at their sponsors and reach out. You have a reason if they sponsored that. That's an email right there. Hey, I saw you sponsored this, and I was wondering if you might be interested in this opportunity that we have here. I've done that before. Engage your chamber of commerce, your rotaries. Try to get a speaking role to talk about your event at the luncheon, or try to get one of your executives a speaking role. I think most of you should probably have those relationships. Just lean on them. If you expect more kids, what company would like to advertise to them during school hours? What companies want to advertise to your attendees? And we encourage all the organization speakers are engaging the public to discuss the event, and that you're looking for sponsors ahead of time. Anything that your organization is doing before the event, your executives, all representatives need to be talking about the event. And hey, if you're interested in sponsoring, let me know. And then just make that machine where all that information comes to you and you just follow up. And then you want to make your list of target companies you want to reach out to. Next slide, please. So I'm going to go into pitching now. So remember this, it's not about you. If you are under pressure with a deadline, if you are under pressure to reach your goals, and if you're an executive that puts pressure on your development people because you think they function better, stop. The psychology states that whatever is in front of people, whatever is on their mind is all they're going to worry about, and that's going to be their motivations. You don't want that to be their motivation. What you want, your motivation when you walk through the door, is I've got a good opportunity and a good return on investment for this company, and I really want them to take it. That's all that your development person should be worried about. They shouldn't be worried about deadlines. They shouldn't be worried about anything like that. They should be worried about what they're going to say when they're going in there. So the first thing I tell people is to practice your pitch. Practice, practice, practice. If you've answered those questions, why it's good for the company, if you've answered the question as how it's going to lift them up in the community, your pitch is easy. Personally, I know why I'm in a room before I get there. I reached out for a purpose. When I go into that room, I'm really asking why they would like to work with my organization. Why did they open the door? Why did they answer that email to me? Because you can build on that. And that's the important thing. When you are worried about stresses and deadlines and things like that, you're not going through the door focused on them. You're going through the door focused on you. Go through the door focused on them. Find out their goals, find out their struggles, and find out why they saw value in your organization, and find that common ground and work and build on it fast. And that's what that paragraph says. Make it about them, not you, not your mission, not your fundraising goal. None of that matters. Focus on them and listen. You'll be amazed at how good people listen when there is no internal pressure for goals. Read the room and take the temperature before you pitch. How much attention do you really have? If you're going in a meeting with 7 people and you're at a table and they're all focused on you, fire away and rock and roll. If you're in the room with one person who's checking their email, getting calls, and answering their watch, say, hey, how about we set up a lunch? Maybe you just generally go over it, keep the meeting short, and then set up a lunch where you can try to pull them out and have their attention solely. But read the room, read the temperature, do some research on the company, look at their social media, look at their website, look at their press releases. They tell you what's going on. You've got to be able to read it. So do that. Make sure they're not in a high pressure situation or crisis. If they're in a crisis, it might be an opportunity, but read the room and take the temperature first. If they get excited, they seem excited, capitalize, go ask right there on the spot. Just remember, whatever is directly in front of them is their priority. So if you've got that meeting and if you've got their attention, do the ask, don't miss it. You should be confident in your ability to pitch because you've answered all those questions. Why is it important? Blah, 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 blah. Or maybe you don't know. And maybe you could reach out to that company and say, look, I've got an event coming up and I really want to pitch it to companies like yours. Could you maybe tell me what you like about this and what you don't? Very rare is if somebody's going to do it, but I've had close relationships with some of my team close relationships with some of my representatives that I could do that with. And they would tell me what they're looking for and give me that real feedback. And make sure your timing's right. All right, next slide. Here are some things to remember. These are some techniques based on a social psychology principles that have worked for me in the past. Consistency. If a company has supported you in your past, they're more likely to support this event. So go back to your past sponsors, even sponsors that have dropped out on you. Maybe this is your chance to rebuild that bridge. Social proof. This is why I told you about putting other logos and putting logos up, because if other people see other people doing it, they want to be a sponsor up to it. So that's also why the VFW puts their past sponsorships on their upcoming conventions. Reciprocity. If you give us this, we'll do this for you. So your sponsor package is reciprocity. If you give us a $5,000 sponsorship, this is how we're going to recognize you. And thus, you need to follow through on that. Foot in the door. This is a great technique to grow your sponsorships. A foot in the door is if you got a company and they're like, this is too rich for my blood, say, look, how about $100 sponsorship? And just show up and you're going to see what it's about and roll that red carpet out for them and nurture that relationship and help it grow. Show them what you can do. I always love that events to me are when nonprofits put their best foot forward. If it's not, it should be. Scarcity. This one's kind of weak, but we only have one sponsorship left at this level. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. Unity. Everyone in the community is going to be there. Everyone else is sponsoring. Authority. This is something that is a hard pill for some egos to swallow, but some companies, some people want to work with your CEO only. Sorry, it's the way it happens. Or the chairman of your board. I don't know. They want to feel important. Maybe they don't feel like you're the high level. Do whatever needs to be done to get that sponsorship. Work with your executive team. I'm sure they'll be very supportive of you. Um, Sympathy is the biggest one. And I ended with sympathy because it segues, I think, to the next slide. But sympathy is, how similar is somebody to you? We like people that are similar to us. When I sit down with someone and I'm meeting them for the first time, you know, we start asking questions. That is one of the reasons why when I reach out to companies, I look for Marines that worked in that company because I know Marines are similar to me. I know that we had similar life experience. I know that they went to boot camp and got yelled at just as much as I did. So these are the things that, and every time I've reached out to Marines, I'm going to be very honest with you, I've gotten a reply. Sometimes I'll look for a male that's my age in the company, different things. Just make sure that you can relate and reach out with your purpose. Next slide. Cold calling strategies. This is it's kind of the same as the last class, but it's been modified a little bit. Social media is your friend. LinkedIn is your best friend. If you can afford a LinkedIn sales account for your development person, it's about $800 a year. I would get that because it has some tools and also has the ability they can reach out to companies that they're not connected to, and they can reach out to people that they're not connected to and do some cold calling. I would say that $800 a year for people to be able to connect online directly to almost anybody on LinkedIn is worth the investment. Look for people in the company similar to you. Look for connected people. This is why we network within our profession. I always tell I've had several calls with people that do fundraising for a specific or for a smaller size nonprofit. I was like, have you reached out to a national nonprofit that does that and talk to their development people to see if maybe they have some thoughts, ideals, or leads? Network within your profession. Network in there and get some help. I definitely did it because I was just a jarhead, and it really took a lot of people helping me out along the way to guide me and help me understand how to work these rooms. And if it wouldn't have been for two wonderful ladies when I first started doing the tiny house project, I wouldn't be sitting here today. They took their time and they talked to me and they showed me some things that would help me. And they were just professionals and they really loved that we were trying to make a difference. Um, I always look for someone similar to me, a serf, and but don't be a stalker. There's a funny story when I was doing the tiny house project. We had a lady that was coming to visit, and I went on her Facebook page and looked at her to see who she's connected to and everything. And I saw that she was getting married, and I said something like "congratulations," and it just shocked her. Did not have the impact that I wanted it to have. So just be careful with that. You want to get the intel for yourself to use, um, and you don't want to surprise them, but you want to do your homework. And if you've done your homework, it will reflect when you're in the meeting. Um, I really love to look at the company's about section on the website. I look for who the director of marketing or community engagement is, and then I engage them on LinkedIn. If that doesn't work, then I'll also do the contact page at the same time, just to whichever one they see first. Some people don't ever check their LinkedIn, and some people don't ever check their emails. It feels like. I'll give you a little email introduction to here, but this is the hardest part. Everybody says ask, ask, ask. And we talked about that the last class. I know it's hard, but also if you can answer those questions from before, what you're doing for the company, that ask should be easy. It shouldn't be ask, it should be present. I'm presenting an opportunity. Are you going to take it? But we all know how hard it is. We've all been in rooms and we've been told yes and no before. So it's really hard. And if you're not having any success online, pick up the phone or walk in the door. Don't be afraid. You have purpose and you have a reason to be there, and go in. Communicate your sponsorship and recognize your sponsorship as you pull them in. Communicate with other sponsors if you want to. Don't communicate with competitors, but I communicated with my sponsors all the time. And leading up to like our main event, we went from like I would give a monthly update, and then leading up to like the month before, maybe a weekly update if it was appropriate. Whatever you and your team feel is good. Next slide, please. Your first conversation, remember, make it about them. Respect their time, but get to know them a little bit. Don't make the relationship transactional. Oh, here's my money, boom, you're done. Those relationships don't last long. So some of my best friends, some of the people that I communicate with on social media and stuff are my past sponsors. Because if I've done my job right and I'm professional and I'm personable and they've really enjoyed it, you are the organization. You are representing your organization. If they connect with you, they're going to connect with your organization. They're going to see what you see as the purpose, and you're going to see the heart and the perseverance that your organization has for the mission. They're going to see that through you. All you got to do is just be yourself. And while I don't recommend blurring lines, don't be afraid to develop personal relationships. If you are, you're doing your job right. It's just a natural byproduct of we're out there, we're humans interacting with other humans. We're going to connect with them. Don't be hesitant. Connect with them and I really appreciate those relationships. I love the national convention because it was like the one time a year I get to see some of my people and actually go to dinner, catch up with them on their wife and kids, family, everything. It's a great thing to do. But start your pitch by asking them if they had any questions and ask them what level they were considering. But if you can go in and you present and you can tell them why you're presenting it, all that's going to take care of itself. And number 4, that one should be like bold in like size 90 font and underlined. Number 4, don't be surprised when they ask for more. They always will. They're going to ask for more tickets. They're going to ask for more people to come. They're going to ask for more recognition. It's just going to happen. Some businesses will require an invoice. Some businesses are going to require a contract. I've done both non-contractual and contractual sponsorships. The reason why either one of those terms bothered me was because I made sure that my organization delivered on what we said we were going to deliver every time. And if I didn't, it was my fault. And those people knew to come to me, not the organization, not to anybody else, because I would fix it. The capture obligations in writing, make a spreadsheet, make sure that the signs are where they're supposed to be, make sure that the reception is ready to go on time, make sure that everything is where it's supposed to be, that the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. Next slide, please. Step 3. So we've figured out what we have to offer. We've packaged it up. We've set ourselves up to make a pitch. Now it's time to deliver. And most of these slides are repeat from the last class. Next slide, please. For the event preparation, if you're brought in, it's your job to ensure that all recognition is completed. Make sure your sponsors know everything. Make sure you're set up to collect that ROI. If you're going to do social media, do it. But the most important thing, treat your sponsors as if your job depends on it. Treat them as if you care. Treat them because you do care. Roll out the red carpet and elevate them, lift them up. And the best way to do that is to plan your time. Know what you're going to do, have your schedule ready, know where you're going to be, and be there at key times. Excuses are BAD. Nothing and no one is perfect, but attention to detail is everything. So it's okay to make a mistake at once. Just don't repeat it, especially with sponsorships. And I've done it, believe me. I've had logos fall through the cracks about a lot of things. So it's very embarrassing and it's hard to recover from, and especially when you feel like you've done damage to a relationship. On your day of event, make sure you walk through, make sure everything looks good. Take plenty of pictures. Make sure you take pictures of the event. Thanks, Nick. I apologize for that. and gather all the data that you're supposed to gather, and make sure you're smiling. Smile the entire time. Even if things are going bad, smile. Never let them see you sweat. That's all I'm going to say. Next slide. So I would like Nick to, I could read this to you, but you're going to get the class. He's going to email it out. Can you open up that last page, Nick? On the web page. This is what I'm talking about for follow up and follow through. The VFW puts together a video. Scroll on down. You can see what they talk about in the convention. Scroll on down, please. They put together, talked about some of the exhibits. Scroll down. They have videos, highlights from the videos from the event are posted up there where people can see it. All they did was add it to their previous existing page. But that's important that you're kind of like gathering and collecting everything and putting it all together so that you're putting it right out there for everyone to see. Maybe you don't, maybe you want to be private about it. If you want to be private about it, put it on a web page and hide the link and send the link out to companies to reveal. Can you scroll down more, Nick? Keep going. And they're recognizing their sponsors. They have a cornhole tournament. Keep going. And these are those are the sponsors they worked with and all the sponsorships they brought in. So these are you can go back to slideshow. The bottom line is follow through is setting up a meeting and sitting down and talking to them and getting a feel for them. I like to do follow through a lunch or a Zoom call or just a quick 5-10 minutes. Say, hey, how'd it go? And just be personal. And it's okay. Don't take it personal. You're not bulletproof. You're going to make mistakes. Ask them where they thought we missed the mark. Ask them where they thought we could improve. Give them that a value, because that value and that input is investment into what you're doing, investment to the event. Next slide. So Nick's going to send out the links. He's going to send out the package. Corporate relations aren't easy. It's 90% no and maybe 10% yes. But if you do the things that I was talking about there, and if you can honestly answer yourself what you're doing for this company, when you as you put your package together, you should be able to be successful in your endeavor to attain a sponsorship. I really appreciate everyone's time, and it's really been a pleasure to do this webinar today. Any questions?
All right, thanks a lot, Kevin. Let me see. We don't have any. We got a few more minutes. If anyone has some questions, go ahead and start throwing those into the chat so we can get to those before we sign off here today.
Yeah, and if any of you have some follow-up questions, Nick, I'll type my email in the chat, and you can send questions to me directly. If you want to have a phone call with me and talk to me about something that you may be working on, or you may look at some materials, you can ask me. I just let you know that I don't like to do things for free, but I'll definitely take a look. If you want me to take a look at it and give it, if it's something real quick, I'll be happy to do it for you. Let's see.
All right. Well, doesn't look like we have any questions coming in.
Well, so, good luck to everybody out there.
Yeah, we'll go ahead and wrap up. Thanks again, Kevin, for presenting today and last month on fundraising. Everyone, just keep an eye out for an email from me with the slideshow, the webinar recording, and then the links that Kevin shared, as well as his contact information. For our next month virtual capacity building workshop, that will be on December 3rd at 2 p.m. We'll cover exhibit building with Sean Fitzgibbons, who's the executive director of the History Museum on the Square in Springfield. Thanks again for everybody joining us today. And if you haven't already, get out there and vote. Have a good afternoon, everyone.